Today I'm going to show you how to install a tomato cage foundation like you have never seen before. I am using half-inch PVC pipe and half-inch PVC pipe connections for the foundation of this tomato cage. In a few minutes I will be securing a root pruning pot to the foundation of the tomato cage I am placing right now. If you're not familiar with root pruning pots, I promise I will explain more about root pruning pots later in this video. I am anchoring the rigid ring and legs of the tomato cage foundation to the ground. On most installations, I use half-inch wooden dowel. Today I'm using 3/8-inch rebar that was in my garage doing nothing. Okay, with the blink, I fast-forwarded to the last two rebar stakes. Later in this video, I will talk about a simpler installation that does not require hammering. The simpler installation does not provide as much protection from the windstorms as the installation I am showing now. The foundation I am installing now can be extended upward by adding more PVC pipe. After I finish setting up this tomato cage foundation, I will show you a similar tomato cage I set up 2 months ago that has PVC pipe extensions going upward of 5 feet with a much larger tomato plant. I am now removing the tomato cage foundation and leaving the rebar stakes in place. I used the legs as a guide to place the rebar stakes. I set the rebar stakes in place exactly where they need to be before digging the hole where I plan to plant a small tomato plant in the ground. The hole for the small tomato plant must be in the center of the 4 rebar stakes. I do this because the root pruning pot that I use has a hole that is centered in the bottom. The big hole in the bottom of the root pruning pot allows for the deep planting technique, which I promise I will explain in detail in a few minutes. The small tomato plant I plan to plant in the ground pops up through the big hole in the root pruning pot. Thus, the tomato plant has to be perfectly centered between the 4 rebar stakes. If I dig the hole before I place the rebar stakes and I hit a rock or a large root when pounding in the rebar stakes, I would have to move the stakes to get around the obstruction. That would put the hole in the center of the root pruning pot off center. Here is an explanation of a root pruning pot that I promised. A root pruning pot has sides that allow air to contact the roots. The root pruning pot I use is a laundry basket that I bought from a major department store brand new for $2. So we've got about $10 worth of PVC pipe and fittings at this point, and a $2 laundry basket. I have attached 4 pieces of tool to the sides of the laundry basket using small 1/8-inch screws. Many people just lay the tool in the bottom of the basket and it looks a little ugly, so I make it with screws so it looks really pretty. A root pruning pot is made from fabric or any material that will allow air to contact the roots that grow up to the edge of the pot. The air actually causes the roots to stop growing. Then the plant will send out more roots from the main stem. Roots that are wound up around the edge of a plastic pot are not efficient at providing nutrients to the plant. That is the theory. After watching this video today, Google root pruning pot. You will find a lot of information and success stories that people are talking about. I will be placing the root pruning pot over a small plant I will be planting in the ground soon. A small plant in the ground that is surrounded by a pot allows for the deep planting technique, which is often used for tomatoes. If you're not familiar with the deep planting technique, I promise I will explain this technique later in this video. The small hole is for a deep watering pipe. In about a month, I will post a follow-up video and show you the progress of this plant. In the follow-up video, I will show you several more installations around here at the retirement home, including an installation on a cement patio and an installation where there is no pot and the PVC legs go straight into the ground. So take a second to subscribe. That way you will get notifications on your YouTube home screen when I post new videos. Just hit the little red subscribe tomato in the lower right corner of this video. With a blink, I planted the small tomato plant. Look close, you will see the plant centered between the 4 stakes. I'm sure you have seen videos on how to plant a tomato plant. There's no reason for me to make you watch me do it again. With the small tomato plant exactly centered, I'm now reinstalling the rigid ring and legs. I wanted you to see how sturdy this foundation is. If it takes a hammer to set it in place, my guess is that it would take a tornado to dislodge this foundation. As soon as I get the rigid ring and legs reinstalled, I will install and lock down the root pruning pot. Right after I get the root pruning pot locked in place, I will tell you all about the deep planting technique. Reinstalling the rigid ring and legs over the rebar stakes will take about a minute. We're getting pretty close to having this installation completed. All we have to do is reset the foundation, and then I will show you the deep planting technique. But first, check out how hard it is to reset the tomato cage foundation over the rebar stakes. This tomato cage will not be going anywhere when the windstorms hit. We get high winds in the fall and winter here. This community garden is in an open, exposed area of the facility. I heard last year other residents had tomato cages and other plants blowing over. This is my first year and I will be prepared. It's pretty breezy right now. Check out that sunflower. I have the deep water pipe in place, and now I'm going to be locking down the root pruning pot. Locking down the root pruning pot adds additional immovability when the tornado shows up. I'll use 4 cable ties, one on each side of the root pruning pot. The root pruning pot has holes drilled in the top edge for placement of the cable ties. The weight of the soil in the pots make it even harder to move the tomato cage. If you don't have a high wind problem that necessitates this type of tomato cage, you can benefit from learning about the root pruning pot and the deep planting technique. Before we move to the tomato cage I set up 2 months ago, I promised I would tell you about the deep planting technique. So here we go. The deep planting technique is often used for tomatoes. Tomatoes will grow roots from anywhere on the stem. As the tomato plant grows up through the empty pot, you can break off the lower growth and continue to fill the pot until it is full of soil, giving you another 10 to 12 inches of soil up against the main stem. This will add another 10 or 12 inches of root growth. Again, there is information on this technique on the internet. After watching this video, Google deep planting technique for tomatoes. The plant in the bottom of this pot will grow up out of the pot, and I will backfill the pot until it is full of soil. I will show you the plant when it has grown above the pot and when I have backfilled the pot to the top in the next month's follow-up video. Okay, here we go to the cage I set up 2 months ago. As you can see, the riser PVC pipes are capped by another rigid ring that has couplings that will allow for additional riser pipes. When finished, the cage will be about 8 feet tall, or bigger if I let the plant keep growing without topping it. My neighbor grew the same seed stock to 12 feet tall last year. It's hard to see. There is twine that encircles the PVC riser pipes every 9 inches to support the branches of the plant as it grows. In next month's video, I will go to the shop and show you how I attach the twine to the riser pipes. It's very simple. I will also show you how I anchor the upper rigid ring to the foundation rigid ring using strong cord and trucker's knots. When the tornado hits, it could rip the plant right out of the cage and send it out of town. However, I don't think any part of the cage will be going anywhere. Thanks for watching. You have about 10 more seconds to subscribe so you will get notifications on your YouTube home screen when I post new videos. Just hit that little red tomato in the lower right corner.